All right. Let's do this. All right. So Hamilton is, unless you've been under a rock the last few years, you have undoubtedly heard of Hamilton. It's a worldwide sensation. It tells the story of Alexander Hamilton, U.S. founding father. Amazing, amazing story. And the thing about Alexander Hamilton that I think we need to remember is that he grew up. Now, my wife is a Hamilton fanatic. She's seen the show 4 times in 4 different cities. She's got the Hamilton app on her phone. She has a book about the production. She even listens to a weekly podcast where a fangirl obsesses over all the ins and outs of the show with all kinds of cast and crew. Speaking of podcasts, about the same time as the start of my wife's Hamilton obsession, I started my own podcast, which incidentally my wife listens to a lot less than the Hamilton one. On the Movement podcast, I chronicle the courageous leaders who are making the hard decisions necessary to build the green, equitable, and accessible future that we all want to live in. Over the course of the last year, I've had hundreds of conversations with elected officials, industry leaders, relentless advocates, and private sector influencers, all in an effort to not only chronicle those stories, but in an effort to help generate the next generation of those leaders. And over the course of those conversations, a couple themes have emerged. First, the external conditions necessary for change to sprout in a community. That's a critical piece. And second, the more internal issues, the leadership skills necessary by the community stakeholders that are also a critical part of allowing change to grow. But an issue that was more surprising than I expected was advocacy. What is advocacy? My working definition is the application of leadership by those not explicitly in charge, especially by those who have been disenfranchised or by users of a product or a system. Which brings us back to Alexander Hamilton, an orphan, an immigrant. He wrote his way out of poverty. He was relentless. It was his only chance to get out, and that relentlessness allowed him to get to the top, and it worked. President Washington named him to be our nation's first Treasury Secretary. Contrast that with Aaron Burr, his frenemy. Aaron Burr, before he was orphaned, his father was president of Princeton University. He had a lot more to lose than Alexander Hamilton, and that impacted every single thing he did. As he counsels Hamilton in the musical, talk less, smile more, don't let them know what you're against or what you're for. Now, by now, I'm sure you know how Hamilton and Burr's relationship ended. You may think politics today are jacked, and they are, but in 1804, a sitting vice president killed a founding father in a duel in Weehawken, New Jersey. But before Hamilton's untimely death, he did make his mark on the U.S. history. So, what I'd like to do tonight is share a little bit of the stories of Alexander Hamilton and share how his legacy impacted today's advocacy. And let's see if we can take some of those lessons and turn our own spark into a flame. All right, so number one, the thing about Burr that drove Hamilton crazy was his unwillingness to take a stand for fear of pissing someone off, even about something as fundamental as the American Revolution or the U.S. Constitution. Hamilton took the other side. He put himself out there, which is what's needed to do anything great. In 2016, Seattle proposed a $15 billion transit referendum. The Seattle Subway Advocacy Group proposed a $30 billion proposal. Not only was this bigger proposal better for riders, but such an audacious ask also made $15 billion look downright reasonable. 2, advocacy is hard work. Hamilton was a prolific writer. He wrote to Get to America. He was Washington's secretary in the war, and he wrote to family and friends. In the Federalist Papers, he wrote 2/3 of the essays that were meant to be evenly divided among 3 men. Similarly, in San Francisco, the advocacy group People Protected organizes hundreds of volunteers to provide a Hands Across America to ensure that bike riders can feel protected and the city can understand how not good that is. As one of the founders said, if the city won't protect us, we'll protect ourselves. Next, you can't do advocacy by yourself. Hamilton was complimented militarily and challenged intellectually by Hercules Mulligan, John Lawrence, Marquis de Lafayette. And similarly, in today's advocacy, you can't do it alone. You have to know that that you are with the people, and you have to do it together. In my hometown of Durham, North Carolina, we recently rolled out participatory budgeting and to allow the citizens to figure out how to allocate $2.4 million worth of the budget. And what not only does this get more people involved in the political process, but it also gives people key information to understand how the public actually feels. Going back to the original lyrics from Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda says, "Let's fan this spark into a flame." A fire needs 3 parts. It needs spark, fuel, and oxygen. Similarly, in advocacy, we can't try to do it alone. We have to put in the work, and we have to be ambitious with what we ask for. So, where do we go from here? First, all politics is local, as former U.S. Speaker of the House Tip O'Neill would say. And the people that are closest to these problems are your local officials, whether that's transportation, housing, or school. So you have to start there. Second, wait for it. That's a Hamilton joke. Whether your issue is environment or education, people or pets, there is likely an advocacy group already meeting in your local community. And so if there's not one, find your local national chapter and get involved, or start one yourself. Find your friends, get together. And finally, as the major theme of Hamilton illustrated, nothing beats action. We can talk all we want, but until we actually leave the stands and get into the arena, it's all talk. If we actually want to fan this spark into a flame, we're going to have to light a match. Let's go. Thank you.